In the heart of the night, this world will burn bright. We will set it alight. In the heart of the night, in the heart of the night, this world will burn bright. We will set it alight. In the heart of the night.
Hello everyone, I am Anthropomantic Fiend and I do horror-related things on the internet. Except when I don't, which is pretty much never. Today I'm doing the Howling 4, or rather just Howling 4. The first one is the only one with a "the" in it, which I don't really know why. This is the fourth Howling movie, Howling 4, the original Nightmare. I had planned on writing down what year this came out, but I forgot to do that, so I'm just going to put that down there. It's the fourth movie, but it makes it sound like it's a prequel, but it's not. It's more or less a retelling of the first movie, or rather, I believe from an interview with the producer of, almost all the Howling movies that I watched, this is actually supposed to be the book, because in my first Howling review, the review of the original Howling, I said that I could sort of tell it was adapted from a book with all the interweaving plot threads, but upon some further research I realized that no, they kind of threw the book out the window and did their own thing, which makes that movie all the more impressive with what they were able to do with the story. This movie is evidently based on the first three books, which is weird because the second movie is based on the second book, and I didn't really see any of that in this movie, so I don't know what's happening. But it hits a lot of the same beats as the first movie does, which makes sense, since they're kind of based on the same overall concept, but to a very lesser degree of effectiveness. I'm just going to get right into it, starting with the soundtrack, which, like pretty much all of the last few Howling movies, has sort of an 80s synth soundtrack with a sprinkling of 80s pop in it. I think that the song, there's a couple songs in here, but there's one that they play in the opening credits and the ending credits, which feels like with Howling 2 and Howling 3, it kind of worked. With this one, it just kind of felt like it didn't belong, just because it really did have more of the setting of the first movie. Other than that, you've got an 80s synth soundtrack that's it's still 80s synths, but I didn't care about it all that much. And then the sound design for this movie is quite possibly the worst thing about it. I got kind of used to it eventually, but especially in the opening scenes, I couldn't tell, but the dialogue just seemed kind of off, like it might have been badly dubbed or not quite synced up or something, and there were just things that were really loud that felt like they shouldn't have been, and just the overall sound design of the movie felt really weird. Story-wise, same basic setup, but it just kind of throws you in there with no context. With the first movie, they sort of set it up for you who this character is. She's a reporter, she's looking into this murderer. Actually, in my first review, I was like, why is she following this guy into this place and allowing herself to get creeped on by this serial killer guy? And for some reason, I was it totally went over my head that she was trying to investigate him, but I don't know. With this one, we don't even know who this person is. We're just kind of thrown into her life with no context. I eventually sort of figured it out, but they don't really give you any time to get attached to her. But she's a writer. She just starts seeing weird visions that are sort of detrimental to her health, so she's told to go to this town. Since it is basically the exact same setup as the first Howling, if you know anything about the Howling at all, and if you don't, just stop the review right here, because I'm probably going to spoil some things about that movie. Just go watch the Howling. I don't know, maybe read the book, don't know if it's good or not, but definitely watch the first Howling movie. She starts seeing visions, she goes to this town, and all of its inhabitants are werewolves, and they really, really withhold that from you and try to make that a big, big twist, which I suppose it was in the original book and sort of kind of was in the first movie. But considering that that's already kind of established as a major part of the Howling based on the past 3 movies, you can't really use that as a twist anymore. But that's basically the story. It's really not all that far off from the first movie. There are bits of it that are different and were interesting or had the potential to be interesting but just didn't quite work. All the main sort of beats of the original movie, at least, are here. And probably the main reason that a lot of the story didn't work was that the acting was kind of meh. I could tell that everybody was trying to get into their characters, but all of the characters just felt very, very flat. There wasn't a lot of dimension to them. And there really wasn't a lot of dimension to the werewolves at all. I missed that, because in all of the past installments, there was kind of a human aspect to the werewolves. With the first one, they have dimension. They're human, but they're also wolves. You can see sort of their inner struggle with that aspect. In the second one, they are basically villains, but they're like villains in a super campy, like comic book villain sort of way that's very over the top and glorious, so I didn't care. And then in the third one, they were sometimes just horrible and evil, and sometimes they were just so human that I really had no idea who you were supposed to be rooting for in that movie. Also, they're kangaroos in that one, so whatever, I don't know. In this one, they're very, very, very one-dimensional. They're literally, like, canonized as, like, Christian demons. And I was, no, based on everything you've done with werewolves before, sort of using them as a metaphor for grappling with your inner desires and cravings, and like having the village be almost like therapy for them in the first one, having them be campy and fun in the second one, and also campy and fun in the third one, but also have this human aspect, and then you're just gonna make them just demons, didn't really work for me. You've got werewolves that are just heartless murderers with no really interesting aspect to their characters, and then you've got sort of one-dimensional goody two-shoes hero characters and one-dimensional douchebag characters, or mostly just character, because the husband slash boyfriend, I don't know which he is, character to the main character is just kind of a jerk. He becomes more so once he gets bitten, because you know he gets bitten, because that's what happens in the first Howling. I don't have a whole lot to say about this movie, because there's just not a lot talk about. Again, there were some little plot aspects that I enjoyed. It sort of turns into a mystery, like the main character seeing all these visions of like a creepy nun. Yes, there's a creepy nun again. Not like the wolf nuns, but from Howling 3, but there's a nun in this one with some actual explanation behind her, which I liked. Seeing these visions of a nun and these visions of an old couple in her cabin, and it's sort of gradually revealed who they are, and sort of it's talked about how they heard howling, and they're talking about all of the evil that's in this town, and everybody in the town's like, there's no evil here, what are you talking about? Except you can't really set up a mystery like that with the fourth installment in a movie that is based around werewolves without everybody already knowing that it's werewolves. It just doesn't work. It would have worked if this was the first movie, but the first movie does everything that this movie does, but better. A lot of people have said this is their favorite Howling sequel, and it's definitely playing it a lot more straight than the Howling 2 and Howling 3, but I think that's to its detriment, because after you've basically told this story with the first Howling movie, and you've done a really good job with the serious aspect of the werewolves, and you don't need to do anything with that. You can have a bunch of stupid fun with Howling 2 and Howling 3. You don't need to try to replicate what 1 did or try to do what the book did with Howling 4, because it's not going to work if you're trying to keep the audience in suspense if the twist is going to be werewolves, because this whole thing is based around people who already love the Howling series and know that it's werewolves at this point. Yeah, I don't know why people like this movie, because it just kind of, it's okay. There were some really cool atmospheric shots in the woods. I have a weakness for fog-shrouded woods, even in subpar movies. At first, I was gonna say that the effects might have been the most lacking in this movie of any of them, but they're not. It's just they withhold the wolves from you for so long, even though like I've said, the audience already knows it's werewolves, come on. The first time you actually see a wolf on screen, it really does look like a Halloween mask. It doesn't look great. And the first time you see, like, any kind of a gore or anything, the wounds don't look the best either. It really does look like something you could make with something you'd buy at a Halloween shop. But that improves later on, and I'm not going to spoil that for you because it's the best part of the movie. I'll also tell you that something unpleasant happens to a small furry creature in this one. So if you get attached to small furry cute animals, don't get too attached here. I'm gonna move into the parts that I really thought were cool that you need to not get spoiled and experience for yourself in just a minute, but I recommend that you check out the stuff that I'm about to talk about that happens in the last 10 or 20 minutes, because that stuff was actually awesome. Otherwise, I think it's much more worthwhile to just watch the first 3 Howling movies, or really just the first one, but I highly recommend the second 2 if you like campy stuff. This kind of fell in between those 2 with not a lot of the good aspects of the campiness or the quality horror, but the last 20 minutes are really fun, so I'm gonna get to that in a minute. So check it out for that, if not for anything else, but it's really not as worth your while as any of the other Howling movies thus far. So that's the spoiler-free section of my review of Howling 4, the original Nightmare. Thank you for checking out this video. Before I get into spoilers and such, I'm just gonna say I have a contest going on right now. I just hit 100 subscribers recently, so it's my 100 subscribers contest. I have a video for that I will probably link here somewhere, but just go to that video, and if there is a video you would like to see me make, something that I've never done before, something I've done before that you want more of, anything within reason, don't make me do anything that I'm probably gonna regret in the future. Comment on that video what video you'd like me to make, and whatever video suggestion gets the most likes before December 1st when this contest closes, I will make. So not a lot of time left for that, so don't know if you care, but if you do, go there and do that. So that's a thing. Thank you for watching my video. Now on to the spoilers. I originally thought that the werewolf effects and the gore in this were kinda dumb, which they were to start with. And then this guy just started melting. Some, like, 80s body horror melt movie thing. He flat out starts melting. His flesh just starts gooily melting off as, like, his skin starts to peel away and his bones are just there. And it's just like, this movie just got way more interesting as soon as that happened. Because I was, like, expecting a werewolf transformation along the lines of what we get in 3, which is, but kind of fun. But this guy just starts melting, and I can tell that they put all of their effort into just creating this gruesome effect, and I love it. But I feel like it would have been a better movie overall if they put more of that effort into everything else. But I love the melty thing, because he just sort of melts into the ground and then comes back as a wolf. The wolves actually look kind of cool. And I said the whole thing about them being sort of one-dimensional demons, but they do kind of play that up later on in a way that does make them very menacing. All the wolves in this have red eyes, and we see some close-ups of this one wolf, which is like the one you see on the posters and the DVD cover and all that. And he's just these huge ears and like these beady black eyes and long teeth and just long claws, and he almost looks bat-like, and it's creepy, and I love it. But I cannot get over that melty werewolf. It was just way too disgusting and awesome. And then you've got the doctor as a werewolf, because yeah, there's the doctor of this woman who has suggested that she go to the cabin and all that. And then they run into this bell tower, and he's in there surrounded by candles. And it's like, yes, they are werewolves. And he turns around, and I was expecting him to be full wolf, but he's like halfway there, and it's so creepy because he looks like, it's so uncanny valley. He looks like the Doctor, but he's like started to morph into some kind of like rejected Jim Henson puppet, like something out of Labyrinth gone horribly wrong. It just looks, it's really nightmarish. And then he just peels his face off. I love that the wolves in this, the way they transform, it's like they have to destroy their human form first in order to turn into wolves, and he just starts ripping his face off, and it's kind of cheesy looking, but it's also just nightmare fuel, and it was great. I wanted more of that in the whole movie, just more nightmarish sequences like this, because it was great. And then, you know, the werewolves get burnt alive, kind of like they do in the first movie, but and the wolves in this, you've got a few shots of them as full wolf, but also shots of them almost in this, like, wolfman, half human, half werewolf form, which was actually really cool makeup. Werewolf transformations didn't make a lot of sense, but oh my god, were they just glorious to look at. That is why you should watch this. You should watch the melting werewolf, and you should watch the Doctor rip his face off. That stuff is awesome. The other stuff is meh. That's basically my review for Howling 4, the original Nightmare. Thank you for watching. I'm probably going to take a break from reviewing Howling movies for a while, because I don't know where they're going to take this from here. They've basically, actually I kind of do because I've looked into them, but I don't know where they're going to go in quality, and I just want to watch something else for a while. So I'm going to be reviewing some pretty good movies and a few absolute atrocities fairly soon, so I hope you watch those videos. I'm very glad that you watched this one. As always, thank you for checking out my stuff, and I hope you'll do so more in the future. So thank you for watching. I've said that like a million times, but I am just grateful that people like this. I'm gonna shut up now. Bye.